On today's episode of Let's Grow Together, I talk with Kody, who is a business coach and NLP trainer. And we had an amazing conversation. He's truly filled with so much experience and knowledge. And he shares his story about how, he got fired from his job, which later led to him following the passion to what he does now today, helping people. And he's just one of those people that's super passionate, super knowledgeable, and just really wants to help people. And we dive into so many different areas of what it takes to be successful, in today's world, and how we utilize the things that we're learning, and taking those things and taking action and turning knowledge into knowing, and how we can take these different pieces to get to the next level. So you're going to absolutely love this episode. Kody is amazing. So let's dive in. But first, the intro. Welcome to Let's Grow Together. My name is Nick Monotadibus, motivational speaker and digital marketing strategist. And this podcast is all about helping you grow both in life and business. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back. I am so excited. I got an awesome guest for you guys today. So cool. I love connecting with new people and mutual friends, and a fellow San Diegoan, new to San Diego. So this is so awesome. Kody, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Glad to be here. Appreciate the warm welcome. Definitely very new to San Diego. As you know, I moved here like a month and a half ago now. So thank you for your warm hospitality. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we'll get together in person soon enough, I'm sure, and we'll do something fun, maybe get dinner, lunch, or whatever. But
Yeah.
real quick, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Yeah. So what I do right now is I'm an NLP trainer. So I train people in neuro-linguistic programming. Previous to that, I was a sales manager for a finance firm, and selling was my entire upbringing from the time that I was like 22 until 26-ish. And I pretty much put all of my time, my energy, my knowledge into learning sales, communication, psychology. And I found myself just kind of losing passion for what I was doing. A lot of it was who I was working for. I found that it was out of alignment with my ethics and my values. And I just didn't feel like it was right for who I wanted to be morally. So I just kind of started diving into the NLP world. And coincidentally, a lot of the stuff that I learned and studied from psychology and sales and communication kind of flowed hand in hand. So now I train and certify people in neurolinguistic programming. I still have a heavy background and a heavy influence in like the sales side, because so many people, whether you're trying to sell yourself to get up and go to the gym, or you're trying to sell a coaching package, no matter what it is, you still need to have that ability to effectively communicate what you're trying to present or position, and then doing it in an attractive way. So NLP and sales, kind of like my two areas of focus and passion, but I'm slowly letting go of that sales side just as the demand for NLP is increasing. I want to be just training and certifying people, understanding that modality so they can use it effectively and help change more lives.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah. And as we were talking before we hit the record button, there's a lot of tie into, NLP and sales. So to kind of have the sales background and then get into NLP makes a lot of sense. But it's doing it in a different way. I think NLP is so cool. It's such a fascinating concept, and I'm kind of eager to learn more. And maybe we'll get into it a little bit today, but I'm curious, how did you get started in NLP?
Yeah, good question. So I actually got fired from my sales manager job in December 2019, December 4th, 2019. And that's a whole other story in itself. But leading up to that, as I told you, I felt very much so out of alignment. My heart wasn't there. My passion wasn't there. And I kind of got to my breaking point where one day I talked to the HR department about things that I didn't feel were ethically correct, which was a Tuesday, December 3rd. December 4th, I got called into the office again and got let go. So again, that's a whole nother story in itself, but it happened for me, not to me. And what I did, just like any logical person after getting fired, I booked a trip to Puerto Rico a few days after to go on a little vacation and just kind of have some fun. So I went out there, I filmed some videos, just content, kind of talking. And coincidentally, my buddy, my roommate at the time, he had this chick over he was talking to, super cool girl. And she was going through that process of NLP. And I'm like, okay, I've heard of NLP, Tony Robbins. I saw a video on YouTube before. I've always wanted to learn more about that. Maybe that'll help me in my coaching business. And she's like, oh my gosh, it totally will. So I was looking into it. I'm like, oh my, this is everything that I love. Understanding like why people do what they do, how to motivate, how to influence people. So I started just kind of going down that rabbit hole. And within like a few days, we booked the class, which was like a month and a half out, started doing all that kind of study. It was like 50 or 60 hours of pre-study that we had to do within a month time frame. So very busy doing that. And then yeah, I went to my first practitioner course, which was a 7-day course. Dude, day one, I was like, okay, here's my credit card, upsell me, sign me up for all the rest of the courses. And I was just going to do that original course, the 7-day course. This was like February 22nd ish, somewhere around there of 2020, right before COVID hit. No one even heard of COVID at this time. So that was about a week course. And the very last day of it, we found out that the Tony Robbins convention, UPW, that we had scheduled to go to in like 5 days, they canceled it because of COVID. And it got to that point. So we're like, wow, okay. So I signed up for my master practitioner course, which is a 14-day course. And to make a long story short, 9 days we were in there and we didn't make it the last 6 days because COVID officially shut it down in LA County too. So that's what started my NLP journey. And it's been just a fun ride ever since.
Amazing. That's so wild from the standpoint of, one, having that experience with your the company you work for, and they're like, bye, see you later, which is like, I mean, that's just like a wild concept. Yeah. I don't know if people could see it. My face was like just jaw dropped on that, of like to go in and be like, I think you guys are doing something unethical, and then get fired the next day. Oh, that's just, oh my gosh. I mean, to me, that's a great sign in my mind. It's like, all right, well, I guess I was right. Like that's what I would assume, because again, is that really like a reason to fire someone? I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly interesting, and we don't have to dive into it, but it's so cool to see. It's like one of those things that, what did you do? Boom, I'm gonna go on vacation. What happens? You meet your friend's, girlfriend, or friend that he had just met, and then this happens, and it leads to this, and then it leads to that path. It's so fascinating of how, one thing just leads to the next, to the next, to the next, to where you are today. Had you not gotten fired, you may not have ever discovered NLP into the way that you're doing it now.
Yeah, dude. And I for sure wouldn't have, because I told myself, once I have $30,000 in my bank account, I'm going to quit this job. Once this happens, I'm going to quit this job. Once I've been here for 2 years, I'm going to quit. After December, I'm going to quit. And I kept saying this because like my heart wasn't in it. The money was amazing. I loved what I did, in the sense that I loved training and coaching and helping people, but I didn't enjoy being a manager necessarily. I didn't enjoy being like, all right, Nick, you're 3 minutes late, bro. I got to write you up. And it was just, there were so many gray areas that I just personally, in my life, I like gray areas, but in business, I didn't really like it, because I like when things are more structured. And it's like, okay, sometimes you got to write people up when they're late, other times you don't. And there were just so many different weird kind of things at this company that it was like I was just fighting on both ends, trying to like make management happy and my sales team. And it was just like constant push, and I was just the one in the middle getting compressed. So there was a lot that came from that job. That could be a whole nother topic in itself. But yeah, man, it's just very weird how one small decision can change the entire course of your life, big or small. And I think that it's usually a small decision. Getting fired obviously wasn't a decision, and it wasn't a small one. But I'm sure someone listening to this can think about maybe one decision they've been wanting to do, and they can't really see the how. James Wedmore says, F the how for now. And they might be waiting to make that decision because they can't see how it's going to play out. But sometimes just taking that first leap allows everything else to work out.
Yeah, it's an amazing process that, it can happen on its own, or, based on your own decision. For me, I was in a situation where I loved my job, and I share this quote, I quit my dream job to create my dream life. That's like, that was the path that I wanted to take. So I had something that was awesome and amazing. I worked with the most incredible people. I had full flexibility and creativeness and all of these different things, but just wanting more. But it's so cool for to hear other people's stories of where they came from, and these examples of just like things happening, and I love the quote that you shared, this happened for you, not to you. And I think that's something that needed to be repeated again, because this is something that in our lives constantly, we have that choice to choose whether or not we want it to be, oh, this happened for us or it happened to us. Because, the more that we can see things like that, the more we see opportunities instead of, doors closing. Oh, I don't have any money. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I love that you said too, like F the how and how we go through that process. So many of us, we want all the answers, like, hey, I'm not going to make this step because I don't know the next step. But the whole thing is, you're not going to know the next step until you take the first one. you know it's
Yeah.
like the
So true.
headlights. I forget what there's a headlights expression. The one I always use is like, you have a staircase, and you take a couple steps up, new stairs appear, new doorways appear, but you don't see them until you're willing to take those first couple steps, which is super
Yeah.
amazing. Go ahead.
No, it's funny. With Intention is my podcast name. And the motto, if you will, is when you live with intention, you realize that life is happening for you and not to you. And I think that that's one of my favorite like quotes or just sayings, but I also think it can be very cheesy and very like, yeah, I know that, I know that. But when you're in the stick of things, when you're in the mud, sometimes it's hard to have that remembrance in your conscious awareness. So I think it's so powerful though, just to really embody that idea. The very first thing in NLP that we learn and we teach is called the formula for success. And what it is, it's cause and effect. Is this person living their life at cause of what happened or at effect of what happened? Effect is the victim mentality, and at cause is empowerment for change. And this has been it's one of the most simple concepts because it's like a day one learning, but it's been one of the biggest things that I learned in my life. I can tell instantly how someone is living just by their language. And I'm sure you know this, you've heard this working with coaching clients. When people are in that effect, the very first thing you want to do is get them to be at cause so they can change it. But on the counter side, there's sometimes like maybe there are friends or our family where they're constantly at effect or living in that victim mode. And you try to get them to cause and they want to go right back to effect. And what I've learned is sometimes the easiest thing to do is just not even try when they're in that mentality of being at effect, because it's so hard to get people out of that. So it's one of those things where, as a coach, even as an NLP trainer, as a friend, yes, we want to help people, but it's very hard to try to get someone out of effect into cause. They have to want to be like, you know what, Nick, yeah, this is where I'm at, but I want to change. They almost have to be the person that's driving that boat, and you just have to be the guide, like, hey man, turn this way, this is where you're going to go with it. But yeah, that's been one of the biggest things that that I've learned is the cause and effect is kind of key for creating change and being empowered.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things, if you just tell somebody to do something, it doesn't work like that. They need to tell themselves to do it. And that's what trained coaches like yourself, myself as well. I'm not, fully trained in NLP, but I'm sure, you and I will talk about that later. But, understanding these principles in, often not giving people advice. And like that's one of the common mistakes. I mean, I was even a call last night and this guy is just like, you should do this, you should do that, you should do that. I'm like, you're not even asking me like if I want to do that. You're just like spitting out a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff that you think I should do. And it's like, that's not what good coaches do. They don't just like order you around and get you to do things. It's, when you have all the right tools, and good coaches help to bring out the best in you. And yes, they're going to hopefully guide you in certain paths. And, and I help people with certain strategies and things, but a lot of it is understanding like what the goals are and helping them to see it in a different way. Helping your clients, like they're looking at something at a 6 and now you're helping them to see it as a 9, helping them to shift the perspective. And when they can shift it, when they can see, then they can take action. But if you're just like, why are you doing that, do this instead, that's just it's not gonna work.
And I think the funny thing is there's kind of two avenues I want to go down. I 100% agree with you in the concept of questions are the answers. And especially coming from a sales background, if I'm trying to sell you on like, let's say this pin, Jordan Belfort style, but I don't understand why you want this pin, how it's going to benefit you, I'm going to sell you on the features. Like, yeah, it's cool. It has an eraser. But until I figure out how this pin would actually benefit you, I'm not really selling, I'm more so telling. So I think it's so important to understand why people actually even have motivation to do it. And with that being said, the very first coach I ever hired was actually a Tony Robbins coach. So very, very high level, generalized, little over 5 grand. It was November of 2019, right before I got fired when I hired this coach. And like, so when you say about asking questions and not telling you, I say yes. And there's a very, very fine balance between like that coaching and consulting role. And I think when you meet in the middle, there's a lot of power there. And I say this because I would ask him things like, hey, what kind of morning routines have set you up for success? He's like, well, what do you think would set you up for success? And I'd be like, I don't know. I guess this, and that. Okay, cool. What else? I guess this. I don't know. Like, does this help? Well, do you think it would help you? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. And like, just this would go on and on where I wanted advice. Like, dude, you're one of the top coaches in the world, as you say. And he was a great coach. Don't get me wrong. But I wanted that level of, okay, I'd like some guidance. I'd like some mentorship. And it was just so strict on, I can't even give you one bit of advice. I have to ask questions with every little thing. So
Mm,
in that, I really learned the power of asking powerful questions and probing to get people to open up. But I also learned that that's not how I want my coaching business to be. I talked to a few people that had a similar coach in that same company, and the same exact experience is what they had. So I like to blend a bit of like that coach consulting role, where it's like I might say, "Hey Nick, try to get you empowered. What do you think is going to be the best for you in this situation? One thing I've tried is this," and I might try
hmm
to guide you that I've learned. But if I'm telling you what to do, then I don't know if it's what's best for you. And most times you're not going to accept it as effectively as you would if I asked you and had you come up with the answer yourself. Again, just like sales, anytime you can have someone else come up with their answer, they feel like they're bought into it. And if you
hmm
want your kid to go to bed early and you give him a bedtime, or you let him choose between a bedtime, let's say, hey, Nick, do you want to go to bed at 8:30 or 9 tonight? Sometimes we talk about giving the illusion of choice. Even if they don't have choice, giving the illusion of it can be super powerful. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think an amateur just wants to sit there and tell people what to do. And a professional is really like, hey, I don't know you as well as you know yourself. And I think it takes a level of confidence and humility to say that, like, I really don't know, but I can help you find the way for what's best for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's been my mission as well. I love that, is like combining the coaching and the consulting, because it is a fine line between the two differences from that element. I think they're most powerful together, where there's that level of like figuring out what their goals and objectives are, and like, hey, this is what I've done. But at the end of the day, you still need to try it for yourself and see if it works for you, whether it be a strategy or whether it be a morning routine, whatever else, whatever that, aspect is. Everything is being a scientist. We need to test things, just because, it's a funny thing about like strategy, is that there's a million different strategies that have worked for a million different people. And so many people love to be like,
Right.
do this because this worked for me, you know, but that doesn't mean that another way won't work. And if you force yourself down a path that maybe you don't like that strategy, then it's probably not going to work because you don't like that strategy. You have to be also bought into like what somebody is instructing you to do, and having belief that that will work, because if you don't believe it, then your prospects aren't gonna believe it either. So I'd like to shift
Yeah.
gears a little bit, because you started to mention it a little bit about morning habits and routines. So I'm curious what some of your morning habits and routines are.
Yeah, man. So I want to be very, very transparent. This is something that I've struggled with for a lot of my life. Man, I bought in freaking different planners, different calendars, different whiteboards, the high performance planner, and like just because I love to wake up and have something structured so I can set the tone, if you will, as we all talk about. But it's very, very hard. Sometimes when I wake up, I don't feel like sitting down and putting my energy or attention to something. So my biggest morning routine as of late has been walking to the beach. So I live about 2 blocks from the beach. I walk down to the lagoon, overlooks the beach, just kind of take it in, relax, take my dog out for a quick walk. And I honestly get inspired. A lot of times I'll wake up and I'll just want to create like a quick video or a piece of content when I'm there because I'm looking at the ocean. And honestly, just for me, it's more so about being in that state of being inspired and less about what I'm doing that sets the tone for my day.
Love that. Yeah. And there's a lot of chemical things that are going on with that process. From the body standpoint, one, you're moving your body in the morning, you're getting your blood flowing, which helps your mental performance. The other side of it is like being by running water. So there's actually like, and again, I'm not an expert in this. I follow somebody else who talked about this, that there's like ions that are released in the air like from running water. And so like just being in that environment actually helps you to increase your mental performance. So, and then I think it's just like there's a tranquil feel to it, when you're in this environment. But I think, it's easy to say that, like us living in California. But I mean, honestly, I think there's a lot of power in, walking around the city. I mean, even when I lived in Philadelphia, you can walk around the city and you can see the graffiti on the walls and just be like, man, this is beautiful. You can choose to see that that's an awesome thing, and just taking that time for yourself to set yourself up. I love that you mentioned like all the planners. I have the high performance planner. It's a little too much for me. I have my own system at this point in time. But I love the effort, because you're only going to find your morning routine from constantly trying. Like mine has evolved over the
Yeah.
last 3 years. There's some subtle pieces, but a lot of it, again, you figure out what's going to work best for you. There's no, do this and this, but you can learn from what other people are doing and then adapt it for yourself and see if it works for you. So you're
Yeah.
doing your walk. What are some other things that you do to kind of set yourself up for success?
Yeah. So for me, being, and I know this is not for everyone, but me personally, going to the gym helps tremendously just with my mindset, my mental. I really like having celery juices. So I have this omega juicer I just got where I'll freshly juice my celery. Downside of that is it's only good for like that time. What I've learned is that if you let it sit for even 24 hours, it kind of goes bad and hurts your stomach. So you kind of got to do it like either the night before, very late at night, or right in the morning. But I like having something like that. And honestly, I think the biggest thing for me is I don't necessarily wake up and get straight to work. And I think that's the scary part, but also the beauty of being an entrepreneur is you kind of set your schedule. So if you're more productive from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., then I would much rather say take your time in the morning, do whatever you need to do, relax, and put in that grind or that hustle or whatever you call it, or even that flow during that middle portion of your day. And that way you can actually go into it instead of forcing yourself to, if you're not like a morning person, for example. So, with that being said, you mentioned something that it has to kind of humble us, saying, like, yeah, we do live in California. We are blessed to be able to just get up and walk to the ocean. So, my question for you, Nick, what would you say to that person in, I don't know, Iowa or North Dakota who doesn't even have a nice city to go walk around? What would you say for him to get
Yeah,
his routine dialed in?
love it. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is the trial and error of aspect of just like figuring out what's going to work for you. Like you said, it doesn't always matter what you're doing, but I think it's super important that when you wake up, you don't get right to work. Like to me, that's just a huge mistake. I've done it, and and you justify it. You're like, no, this is right, but it's not. It like when you just set time for yourself in the morning and get the most important things done, and it doesn't matter what those things are. You know what your priorities are. So if your priority is your family, then you make sure first thing in the morning you take care of your family. If your priority is fitness, then make sure that you do some fitness in the first thing. Like I work out in the morning, I read in the morning, because to me that's a huge thing. Is like I read every single morning. I know you're a big Think and Grow Rich fan. I'm just started reading that for the second time. And it's just when we take that time for ourselves and we set the priorities of things that aren't work first, we're just going to show up in our workday so much better when we take care of those things first, because then you're not thinking about it. I used to work out in the afternoon, but that was a struggle for me because all day I'm like thinking about when I'm going to work out or like when I'm going to end the day, and like, oh, if something comes up. And when I started working out in the morning, it was a total game changer, because now I don't have these parameters. Like everything I wanted to do that day, read, exercise, meditate, stretch, journal, it's all done. And I wake up early to make sure, you get it done. And everyone has that potential to find that time. And I recommend, if you can get outside, you know, even if you're in Iowa, it's nice to get outside even
Yeah.
for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
makes such a huge difference.
And I will say too that it's kind of funny. I'm not a morning workout person at all. And I've obviously it's not a new concept, but just you mentioning it, it has me thinking that if you start your day with a workout, the flow you're going to have going into it, you're fired up, you're hot, you're ready to go. Your endorphins are released. You feel so good. You've already accomplished something. So the energy that you're going to have going into the rest of the day is going to be insane. And I think that even like, for example, if we worked out right before this podcast, we'd be fired up. We'd feel a little pump in our arms. We'd like have our blood rushing still. So I think there's a lot of validity in that. One thing too you mentioned about reading, I kind of want to take you here for a little bit if you're down to. It's the idea that I don't know if I thought of this or whatever, but toxic consumption. And this is something that I did for a long time, especially when I was starting my business. I would wake up like, okay, cool. I'm going to listen to this podcast. Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and read this book. And cool, great. We got to learn. But I kept doing it for so often, hours throughout the day, that one, consuming that much content, I wasn't taking anything away that I needed to. And also, I had the false illusion that I was working on my business because I was working on myself. And yes, that is a part of it. But when you spend so much of your time doing that, it's not doing things that move the needle. And I think that's why it's so hard for a new coach or a new entrepreneur to just get in and get straight to work, because they think they need to learn so many more things. You see all these certifications behind me, they're great, but I need to work on things that are going to move the needle. I can have all the knowledge in the world. I can be the most knowledgeable person about NLP, but until I learn marketing to get clients attracted to me, until I learn sales to convert those prospects to clients, no one's going to know how good I can possibly be. So I think there's a huge important factor that people often overlook when they're starting is like, what is going to move the needle today? I would much rather focus on those 1, 2, 3 things than consuming hours of the best content in the world. Because as you mentioned, like, we don't know what's going to be best. We can hear someone else talk about their strategy. But you're an amazing podcast host and speaker. But if you're telling someone who's super shy or doesn't want to show their face, doesn't want to speak their voice, you got to have a podcast. It's not going to resonate with them. So I think it's so important, like you mentioned, that trial and error, figure out what works best for you. And that way you can start to formulate your own thing that's worked through that process of failure sometimes. Because I think, I'm sure you can speak to it, but I know for a lot of my business, first year, like, failed a lot, like a lot more than I expected, but you learn a lot from that time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up such a great point too when it comes to like absorbing content. One thing I wanted to touch on, you mentioned like your focal point, which, part of my morning routine is like I write down like my 90-day goals. So like each day I'm focusing on like what my objectives are. So I stay focused on this is what I'm completing in the next 90 days. And I'm writing it every day so that I don't get distracted with different things or trying to go chase the next shiny object. And us as entrepreneurs, we love to learn. So it's like, I recently went through this I guess launch, and I really wanted to buy it, but I'm like, no, this isn't the direction. Like, I have what I need to do. I have to focus, and this is not going to be the best suited for what my goals and objectives are. It's just going to take me down another path. But one thing you mentioned too, and I think it's super valuable, is understanding that knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only the potential for power.
Yeah.
And so if you're just going from content to content, learning and learning and not integrating it and not implementing it, then you're not going to get the results like you said with your first year. And same thing for me. And like, I learned way more from just like doing than I did from any book or any podcast or any course. And so if we're just bouncing around from course to course, but not actually attempting to implement it, then we're not actually coming from a place of knowledge. That's only, knowledge is not knowing. And so like when we actually do it, that's when we know it. But knowledge only goes so far. We need to be those practitioners that we're actually implementing what we learn.
Yeah, so true. And I think the fact that you mentioned, and we're all different again. So I love how you said that. It's just something that I want to put as a focal point, because people might be hearing us rap right now and think like, well, I can't relate. So I want you guys to use whatever ideas or topics we're talking about and relate it to your own different field or industry. You mentioned that sometimes just getting your hands dirty and doing like the how is going to be best. And I was teaching a course, or a Clubhouse room rather, on becoming an effective communicator using NLP. And one of the biggest things is understanding who you're communicating to. You'll have people that are the why learners. They need to know, why am I here? Like, okay, what is this? A lot of times we'll introduce a podcast. Hey, this is a podcast. This is who I'm with. This is what we're going to talk about. This is the why. Then you have the what learners. Like, what? Give me the data. Give me the statistics. Give me the facts. Give me the content that I'm going to be learning here. And then we have the how learners. They just want to try it. They're the people that might open up a like, I have this new little table and desk set right here, and they're the people that would get this in the mail in a huge box, toss the instructions, and just start getting their putting things together. And then we have the what if learners, which are the people that ask like the Q&A, how does this apply to me? What if this doesn't work? The objections and stuff like that. So knowing who you're speaking to, I think is so important in that. And just since we're on that topic, one thing we talk about as well is like your preferred learning style or your representational systems, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And once you can speak to these people in a certain way, for example, Nick might be talking a lot about like, yeah, I can just see us doing a great podcast together. It would look so cool. So he's using visual predicates. So I'm going to speak back to him, or I might show him a picture of what I've drawn up because he's a visual learner. So understanding how to speak to that, I think, is super effective as well.
Yeah, you
And
bring up
different.
Yeah, you bring up such a good point from us as coaches and understanding how we work with different people, because everyone has different tendencies too. Like, I love the example you brought up earlier about the kid, and if you like give the kid the choice, which is interesting because that's mentioned in the book The Four Tendencies, by Gretchen Rubin, and she talks about how like the rebel child. So there's like four tendencies. There's an upholder, an obliger, a questioner, and a rebel. And so like the questioner, for example, and you were talking about it, they're like, why is this? Like, what am I doing this? And why, they always want to know more. And if you give them the right answers, you give them the why, and they believe it, then they'll do the habit. It's all about like habits and getting people. The rebel, if you give them choices, then they feel like they're empowered and they're not being told what to do. And so then they'll be more likely to do that habit. But an obliger, for example, it's like, do this right now. And then they're like, okay. But that's like, they need somebody that's going to hold them
Right.
accountable.
And speaking of that, and now relating it to someone that might be starting an entrepreneurial journey, I feel like someone in that obliger standpoint would very, very much so benefit from having their day structured out, having a whiteboard with what they need to do, having their morning routine dialed in. Because one of the biggest things I thought was so cool about starting my coaching business was like, all right, sweet, I'm my own boss. I got no one to look up to, no one I have to answer to. And then it's like, okay, wait, who's going to tell, what do I need to do today? I don't know. I have to figure out what to do and then go out and do it, which I think is can be very challenging for a new coach or a new entrepreneur.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, discipline of understanding. And I think that's why it's super important to go back to what we were talking about with our goals and understanding what our objectives are, because then it becomes super easy to plan your day. Like, if you're not sure what to do today, but you know what your three most important objectives are, then your tasks should be focused on those three most important objectives. We get so lost in certain things like, oh, what am I going to do? Should I do this? Should I do that? It's like, well, do these three things move the needle? Like you mentioned that earlier too, move the needle, which is
Mm-hmm.
so important, because us as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're just doing things because we think that we're supposed to do those things, but
Yeah.
we're not asking ourselves, like, is this actually moving the needle, moving the bottom line, a revenue generating activity? Is it going in the direction and the vision that I see for the next 3 years, 5 years? And having that. And so things become easier when we simplify and focus on just the few most important. James Wedmore, who I know you follow, he talks about bridges, and if you're trying to build a bunch of bridges, then you're not going to get to your destination because you got all these half built bridges. And when you really focus on just building that one bridge, focusing all your efforts on those one things, you're going to get to your destination faster, quicker, and more effectively. That focus
Yeah.
is so important.
No, very, very true. And I think having someone show you what you should be focused on, or more so what you shouldn't be focused on, is so valid. And I hear, and I'm sure you see it too all the time, people on Facebook, you need a coach, you got to have a coach. And it's like, you can see the people that are doing this, they're positioning themselves as, hey, Nick, you need a coach, so reach out to me, that kind of thing. And obviously there's a way to do it with tact and there's a way not to, but there's also a lot of validity in it. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of new coaches that are up and coming in their business. And I'm like, okay, great. What are you currently working on? I'm building out my website. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm going to write a book. I'm starting my podcast. And it's like, okay, great, great. How are you going to get people to read the book? Like, are you giving it as a lead magnet? Well, what's a lead magnet? Like, okay, no worries. Like, where's the traffic going to come from to go to your podcast or your website? Well, I'm going to tell my friends and family about it and they're going to share it. Like, okay, so you're going to build a business just on referrals. And so I say all this to say that, like, a lot of times we do the wrong things, and it's stuff that I did when I started out. I know that first thing, okay, cool, I got a coaching website, I have my prices on it, and then no one ever went to the freaking website. So I think having someone just kind of put those blinders on and be like, all right, Nick, this is what your goal is, go down this road. But I think the most important thing is there are a million different strategies. There's not really a right strategy for you. I think there are some wrong ones, like starting with a book or doing a website thinking that's going to get you somewhere. But I think the biggest bit of advice I would want to have for someone starting is not just to find the coach, but do like mad research, figure out who resonates with you and look at the fruits they have in their life. Like, don't just look at what they're posting for their business, look at the cool stuff they're posting outside of their business. I've had, I don't know, 6 or 7 different coaches since I started. And I've always noticed that the ones I had the best results with, the ones that cared the most about me, my progress, and me as a person, were the ones that actually showed their personal life too, and not just this business persona or image. So I don't know if you've had that experience or not, but I think that's something that I definitely had to spend a few tens of thousands of dollars and months learning the hard way. But I think that's just one bit of advice that I'm just feeling called to share with someone who may be listening.
Yeah, I love that. I find it, as someone, because a lot of times I do talk about, social media and video marketing, and sharing like who you are as a person is like one of the most powerful tools that you can do in, representing yourself as more than a business, because you're more than a business. Yes, you may have
Yeah.
a coaching business, but like you like fitness and you like to go on hikes and you like to go on bike rides. Like those are things that people can resonate with. Maybe you're a parent, or you like sports. Like all of these things are like how you connect with people on a deeper level. And to circle back to what you're talking about from a coaching standpoint of like blind spots, is like we all have blind spots. I have a coach. It's so important to have a coach that can show you what's happening. I had a client recently that I was working with, and she was seeing all of these different things that she could do, and I was like, whoa, 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 like we've built this like lead machine, and we need to figure out what's not working here, not for you to go try and build another machine. Like we need to focus on this piece. And like I noticed that there was like not an objection, because she made a comment later. She's like, you thought I was upset, but you would know if I was upset with you. And but she came back the next call, and all of those things, she was like, all right, like you were right, I thought about what you said. We need to focus in this area. And like that's what a coach does. It helps you to stay on track, help you to see the things that you're not seeing. Because sometimes like you're getting excited about something, which is great, and you think if you're getting excited about it, then that's the direction that you should go. But it's often not, because again, repeating myself here, but like chasing that shiny object. We love to do this thing, but being able to have someone to be like, come back, come back, reel you back in.
Come on. I think that, one good, I love coming up with like just weird off the cusp analogies. I don't know why, it lights me up, and I think people can relate to it. But if you think about it, kind of like if you go to the gym and I'm like, all right, Nick, you want to get buff, you want to get in shape, you got to go work out. And you go to the gym today and you do chest, and you come back, Kody, I don't know, like, I'm just not looking any bigger. Like, okay, Nick, it's your first day. So tomorrow you do shoulders. Kody, I don't know, something's not working. I'm not looking how I want to work. You're in there for 2 weeks. I noticed a little bit, but I don't think it's enough. I don't think this working out thing is actually working for me, so I'm going to go in there and do legs the next day. And you keep switching it up, but it's a compounding process, and it takes time with all the things that you're doing and not doing, especially in your field. Like, you might put out an amazing ad or amazing like product and get your content going, but there might be one tweak you need to do, whether it's in the copywriting, whether it's in the targeting, the traffic. And like sometimes I think people, again, myself included, I'm no better, like until we learn that we need to almost fail a little bit, we need to find out what doesn't work sometimes and then use that process of elimination to go back and find out what does work. I think is going to be the biggest key to some people's lasting success versus some people's quick success. Because let's say we put out something right away and it hits. I get clients, I get a bunch of people that want to work with me. Cool. I put something else out 6 months later when I free up some more time and it doesn't work. Now what? Now I'm starting a business having no idea. I can try to replicate that first thing, but if that doesn't work, I haven't had that time or that ability to realize that those things not working out showed me what to teach to my clients, showed me what to show people to avoid, or else we're kind of just talking from, again, what worked for us instead of knowing the industry, having our finger on the pulse and saying, hey, this is something you might want to avoid. This is something I tried and it didn't work. I may recommend something else for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, even for me when I launched my first course, which is why I'm launching another course, because you start to see what happened within the first course, like different things, different pieces that were missing based on seeing the results and what clients were doing. They're doing certain pieces. And I was like, man, this thing that I spent 3 minutes on in my course actually needs about 2 hours to spend on, and so that's where you start to see and understanding like your first is not going to be your best, and that's
Yeah.
okay, but you need to have that first so that you can continue to improve and make tweaks and change. And I love the fitness analogy too, because I'm super into fitness, and I think it's so important that one, we remain consistent but doing it in a thing that you enjoy. Like if you truly like despise running, it's going to be really difficult for you to like get up and continue to run. So it comes to that trial and error. Maybe you go for a walk on the beach. Maybe you go for a hike. Maybe you go for, you get a Peloton. You figure out what's going to work best for you, and not just like torture yourself potentially through this process. I mean, I love running personally, and I think it's like super powerful, but there's tons of similar exercises that are just as rewarding, and finding what's going to work best for you is going to get you so much greater results because of the consistency that comes with it. It's like the snowball effect. You get that momentum, you get that compound effect of, yeah, running's great one time, but then try running 3 times a week for 3 months and imagine how you're going to look and feel after that, and then maybe 6 months and then a year. Whenever you see somebody with like a weight loss journey, it's not like this guy lost 60 pounds in 10 days. Like, no, he
Yeah.
lost 100 pounds in 12 months. It's like people love to look at things in the short term, but the best things happen from long-term consistency of focusing on your goal and not stopping until you achieve it.
Yeah, and there's the compound effect by Darren Hardy where he talks a
Mhm.
lot about that. But I think what's really important too is, like you said, the shiny object syndrome, where it becomes very easy in the coaching world to be like, hey, well, this organic marketing is not working. I'm going to go to paid ads, but your offer is not even dialed in enough, and you're putting all this money into paid ads, but you haven't validated your offer to see if people are going to want what you have to sell. Then it's like, okay, paid ads didn't work. I'm going to go and start a webinar. And then you do a webinar, but you have no one watching the webinar, or no one's actually staying to watch the full thing and booking a call with you. So just to land this plane, I think there's a lot of validity in what you said about going with one thing, like knowing what your goal is, going with that one bridge, finding your way to completion, and just seeing what happens when you actually complete it and get to the other side. You don't need to stick with it, but you at least need to get to the other side so you can cross that bridge fully, to realize if that journey along that bridge was something you want to continue doing or not. But if you're stopping halfway to start a new bridge, you're going to have to go backwards for that whole entire way you just built to go back and find a new bridge to build. So
Oh
I,
man, I love that extended analogy of like the physicality of you being at this like 90% built bridge and you got to walk the whole 90% to then build another. You're like, oh man, that hits deep. It's like,
I'm a visual person, as you can see. I'm picturing what this bridge would look like. I can see a troll under this bridge. I'm walking backwards this whole way, like the walk of shame. Uh, no, I'm just kidding.
Love it. Awesome. Dude, Kody, this has been so amazing, man. I mean, we talked about some really cool things. It was awesome, hearing your journey, from getting started with NLP to, your job and sales and getting fired and it turning out to be, the best thing for you. It happened for you, not to
Yeah,
you, you mentioned like understanding, the formula for success and what it takes for that standpoint and pushing forward and making it happen. You talked about your routines a little bit and walking on the beach, and we talked about just figuring stuff out. This is in everything that we do, whether it be morning routines or business, it's all about being a scientist and trying different things. If you are, just trying one thing and it doesn't work right away, you just may be missing like one small piece. I mean, towards the end, you talked about like your offer. It's like, yeah, if you're driving all this traffic and then you're not getting sales, like you could make one small tweak to your offer and then all of a sudden, boom, you're getting sales. Your ad may be perfect, your landing pages may be flawless, your sales page is awesome, but you're just missing this tiny little piece. I mean, they talk about you can change the button color on a sales page and that increases your conversions. Like, we need to tinker and change, not just all of a sudden we're going to go try something new because the one thing didn't work. We need to
right.
focus and keep giving it attempts and tries and tweaking and seeing where we can build and improve from that. We talked about knowledge is not power, and I think that's super powerful in itself and understanding. And again, it goes to just doing, and we're going to learn so much more. You can't learn how to swim by reading a book, just got to get in there and make it happen.
Yeah, you got to drown a little bit. You got to get some water in your mouth. You got to put the floaties on, slowly take them off. So it's a process for sure. Just to kind of to echo what you said, we talked about Brandon Lucero earlier. He mentioned something. I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but riding a bike, and you can have all the degrees and certificates with like, yeah. So Nick put in so much time, 100 hours learning how to study the mechanics of a bike. He knows everything about bikes, but that person that's rode a bike since childhood, that's fell, scraped their knees, knocked their bike over, put the kickstand up, took the training wheels off, and had that process, they're going to know a lot more how to teach someone when it comes to actually, okay, this is how you avoid falling. This is what you want to watch out for when you see this happening, as opposed to that person who just knows the knowledge or the theory that's almost just preaching on the idea or the concept versus the experience. And I think it's kind of a troubling thing to see in like the coaching space, is that a lot of people, like, they'll coach coaches based on what a coach has taught them how to make money. And this is not for everyone at all. I don't want to do a generalization and blanket statement this, but you can hear it when you talk to people. You can see it in their marketing. It's like you meet someone, what do you do? Oh, I coach coaches. What do you coach them in? Well, to grow their business. Like, okay, what do you specialize in? Well, helping them grow their entire business. And it's like just stuff like that. You can tell it's like, well, do you help them with their marketing, with their sales? I understand there's an element of everything there, but I think it's sad. And I think that's also what gives the coaching industry kind of a bad name.
mm,
And also, like, it puts people up for a false expectation that you're going to expect magic to happen or to launch a business, but the person that you're hiring hasn't fully launched it and done it themselves. They're just teaching something they've been taught.
right.
So I think that's something too for people to consider. I obviously love having a coach, love the power of it, but finding the right one is just so imperative, man. And like I mentioned, in 2020 alone, I spent over 25 grand on coaching, certificates, everything that you can think of. And a lot of it I had to learn the wrong way. Not even about what they were doing, but about myself and being out of alignment. And I think one thing that you mentioned earlier was that you have to set yourself up for success that you want to keep doing. Like, if you want to get in shape and you want to lose fat, for example, but I'm telling you, Nick, you got to run. You got to run. This is what I do. It works perfect. But if you're more of a jump rope kind of guy, we need to get you on jump roping. And so I say all this to say, when I first started my business, I was sales coaching. And I realized that even though I love sales, I got into the coaching space because I wanted to learn NLP. I wanted to be like Tony Robbins. I wanted to change people's lives. And I was not passionate about training sales as much as I was about training mindset. So a lot of days went by where I'd wake up and I didn't feel like making sales content. The thought of making a video about building rapport and opening and closing and understanding how to find your prospect and convert them, it didn't light me up to the point where I was hindered by inaction because I was out of alignment. So I think that's so important for us all to realize is like, if you're not aligned with something or someone, you don't need to continue down that path.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to love what you're doing. And even before we you're touching on like the difference is between knowledge and knowing. For me, one of the compliments I get is like, yeah, you're always posting videos. It's like, well, yeah, I teach people how to make videos. It'd be pretty awkward if I didn't post any videos, and that's what I teach people how to do. It's one of those things that if you're following somebody who says to do this but isn't actually doing it themselves, that may not be somebody that you know want to invest in. um you
So
know
true.
and I think that that's like a huge aspect. Man, this was so awesome, and I know we could go on forever, and I'm sure at some point I'll bring you on for a part two, which I love. But real quick before we close, what do you have like a one or a few books that you absolutely love that you just like recommend to everyone, or something that's just it's your go-to? This is the book.
Yeah, so I would say the first thing that comes to mind is The Go Giver. I freaking love that book. I just think that it's so aligned with who I want to be. And it's very much so like what a new person in like the personal development experience would kind of get to go through. I don't have you read it at all?
No, but it's funny because I love asking this question because you're not the first person that said this. So when I
Okay.
hear repetition, it gets bumped up on my list.
Okay. So one quick backstory, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. There was a phase of my life where I really liked that book and I kind of put myself through pain. I actually bought this watch right here because I want to get out in the mountains and start tracking my stuff more. And I went through that. But The Go Giver is more so how I want to live my life. And it's all about this one guy that connects like this kid or the salesperson to so many different people. And I don't want to spoil the book. You can obviously read it. It's a very quick read, but man, it's been such a good one. And dude, I have a bunch of books on my shelf, a lot I haven't even read through. I haven't had the time to. I have Traffic Secrets right here by Russell Brunson. That's been a very interesting read. But yeah, I think it's kind of hard to find the right book because there's so many good books. And everyone you talk to, it's almost like they're quick to recommend a book that they've read or they've heard of that a lot of people recommended them to read. So I think like one of my favorite things to do is find a topic that I want to learn for like the month. Let's say that this
Hmm.
month is going to be all about public speaking, and I'm going to read different books on that one topic because I can read a book and get a bunch of different information here and there. But having one topic and then finding books around that, I think is going to be the biggest recommendation I'd have for a listener. And that's because a lot of people ask me, like, Kody, what books do you recommend? And I always say, well, what are you trying to learn? And
Right.
most times people are like, oh, well, I just want a good book. Okay, cool. Like, is there an area of your life you want to improve on? And then we'll kind of niche it down, if you will, to like leadership. Okay, cool. Maybe you want to look at like Jocko Willink, or maybe you want to start heading in this direction because that's
Mm-hmm.
going to help you with that. So everything comes down to just being intentional, I think, with your time when it comes to content. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned.
Love that. Yeah, I'm a big habits guy, so I've got like a million habit books to recommend. But if you're not like trying to learn habits, then it's not a good book recommendation, And there's so
Yeah.
many different areas to go. And I have read Can't Hurt Me. That's like one of the most insane books I think I've ever read. And I do
It,
recommend that one often.
it,
That's one of my highly recommended book. He is a nut, but he's
it makes
also,
you
yeah.
Yeah, it makes you kind of reevaluate your workouts, your life, like your mental capacity, if you're actually putting in as much as you should be, the pain that you might be going through. So it's gnarly. He created a whole movement around that. I want to say it's called like the 4x4x48 or something.
Oh, I
Uh,
just heard about this.
yeah,
One of my friends just started doing it, the David Goggins experience, and it's like you run 4 miles every 4 hours.
4 hours, I believe, for 48 hours,
Right.
something like that. I'm not, I
Yeah. So
can't
you
say
wake up in the middle of the night and you run 4 miles. Like it's, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
That means you're not sleeping longer than like 2 to 2.5 hours at any given time. So
Yeah,
maybe
that's
3 if you're lucky, but yeah, that's wild.
yeah.
Well, hey, you said you're a runner, so now that we have you live in this podcast, I think that you can do a commitment for us all, maybe to try it out and let us know how
Oh
it went.
man, see, using his coaching technology experience to get me into action, but that's not going to happen here today. I'm not
We'll edit
committed to
that part
that
out.
one. I believe in my word, and I'm not going to do it right now. Maybe I will, but if I know that I might not, I'm not going to say that I will. Love it though. This has been so awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Real quick, what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you, follow you, reach out to you?
I would say probably Instagram, for the fact that, one, you can see a bit about what I do, and two, if you click the link in my bio, it'll take you to like my NLP training, my life coach certification trainings, my podcast. Pretty much a link just about who I am and what I do. It's easily accessible on my Instagram page.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Kody, thank you so much. This was amazing. I hope you guys check him out and learn some NLP, and I'm sure I'll be diving into that too. Keeping an eye on you more, and so I can learn more about NLP. So awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here. Thank you, listeners. And remember, let's keep growing together.
Let's keep growing.
Wait, one more thing. I would first like to say thank you. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this message, please take a moment to write a review. By writing a review, it helps people find this message and helps me help more people. And if you really, really liked it and you think this message could help someone else, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and please tag me at Nick J. Boni, NickJBoni, so I can show my appreciation for you. We can all win by helping each other grow. Thank you. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.